Hey guys, welcome back to 1999 Mall Crawler. This is the second part of the Offenhauser series, vids, whatever you want to call it. Did you guys see that lizard in the beginning? That was crazy, huh? Talk about main character syndrome. Anyways, I didn't notice him in the first vid. It was just when I was going through editing this one. Anyway, it's kind of funny. Crazy lizards. All right, the joys of living in Florida. All right, so in this one, I'm going to go over theory of the Offenhauser, how it's supposed to work, where I think it might have had some pitfalls, also where I had some pitfalls, and I have a theory as to why it failed the propane test, which is funny because I was like all braggadocious, like, oh, propane never stalls, and then I stall it. Anyways, remember, I'm just a guy in a shed with a Jeep, man, so I don't have fancy CFD computing hardware, programs, all that jazz. So this is literally just my ideas. If you think they suck, leave some comments, man. But hey, you better subscribe before you tell me I suck. All right, let's get into it. So the Offenhauser was designed in the 60s, right? And it's a dual port. As far as I know, they're the only ones that make it. They get confused a lot. Hopefully I don't mess up the wording, but between dual plenum, dual plane, and dual port. Offenhauser is a dual port. A dual plenum is like this. At least this is what Google tells me. Although, I gotta tell you that actually kind of looks more like a dual plane to me. But anyways, and this is what I think of when I see dual plenum, which is where one plenum and then two plenum, right? Before it gets into the runners. It's more so an EFI thing. Pretty cool design though. You see it on like the tricked out skylines and stuff like that. Dual plane, that's easy to find. Google image and you'll find it all over the place, but usually in V8s. I'll explain it here just for explaining purposes. A dual plane in a inline six would look more like this. Inside you would have the divider, which is that blue. And then you'd have one primary throttle and one secondary throttle feeding the first three cylinders. Then this another primary throttle and another secondary throttle feeding the last three cylinders, right? So basically you're taking inline six, splitting it into half, making it in all the way down in half, making it into two 3-cylinder engines kind of smacked together, right? And it also has to have the right firing order, which yes, I've already looked into it. A Jeep actually does have the right firing order. But you don't see it very often. I don't know why. I really don't. I am really curious to try one, but one day, not now. BMW back in the late 70s, I think, 80s, they made one for an inline six, and that's kind of cool. I don't know of anyone else that makes it. I don't know if like the Nissan Z series, like that, is it the L32? L30, yeah, I think. Anyways, I don't know if any other car manufacturer ever did it, right? It's a very common thing for stock, because of keeping velocities up and better off the throttle and stuff like that, which I'll get into again. The Offenhauser is a dual port, which means that it's basically two intakes slapped on top of each other, feeding all 6 engines. That's why, all 6 cylinders. That's why it's not like a dual plane. The primary feeds all 6 and the secondary feeds all 6, but they are separated, right? They do not share the same plenum. They do not share intake runners until it gets to the very end, right before the port, the intake port of the cylinder head. So that's the idea behind it. That's why it's called dual port and not dual plane or dual plenum. So here we can see the primary, the bores are a little bit longer, or a little bit deeper, I should say. Sorry. You can see in red, it's longer, and then the secondary is a little bit more shorter. That's because of the design. This right here, I crisscrossed it because that's literally how it is. The primaries really are that deep. It's a heated plenum, so that's why they go all the way down, right? So you may be thinking like, well, why would Offenhauser design something like this? It's actually a pretty sound concept. We see it all over the place. So it's supposed to aid in lower RPM and also cruising with basically air fuel intake velocity, right? And it's rushing into the port. It's like slamming into there. It's also, you don't get reversion. I don't want to get into reversion right now, but it basically forces it all in. There is no reversion. That's the idea of it, right? So you want high velocity, but also low turbulence, right? You don't want it. You don't want a hurricane in there, right? It's all a balancing act. Okay, it's like everything about engines that I found is like three little bears, right? This one's too hot. This one's too cold. This one's right in the middle. The pain in the ass little bears. The higher velocities aid in airspeed atomization, especially with a carb. The signal to carb, that's another one. It aids in the signal, which in turn, like I said, is supposed to enhance fuel mileage, increase torque, and lower RPMs until your secondaries are wanted, and then all of a sudden it's full tilt, right? That's when you get the use the whole entire intake runner. So this is the same concept as spread bore carbs, right? And progressive carbs. You don't, even on like the one to the right, that's obviously a square flange carb. You don't want all four of those throttles opening at one time, especially, well, yeah, maybe you do on a high RPM engine or just drag racing. But in normal, if you're a normal vehicle, a normal human, you want the primaries to open first, and then when you really want full tilt, then the secondaries, right? I'm sorry, I don't mean to explain like all this crap, but this is the idea behind the Offenhauser, right? So it seems like it's in the weeds, but it's really not. And this is the same idea as the Venturi principle, the Vanelli's principle. Even on modern cars, the variable valve mechanics on newer cars, they use the same thing. And why we also see slightly smaller cars from the factory, focusing on more drivability versus full tilt race mode. So that's the exact idea behind this whole entire thing, right? They basically doubled down on the spread bore carb, which is ironic because it doesn't take spread bore carbs. You would think that the Offenhauser Dual Port would use spread bore carbs because it's the exact same principle and idea, but it doesn't. It uses square. I don't know, man. And to further pound this in, we can look at the MCSA. I got this off of Einstein Racing. They got crazy calculators. So this is minimum cross-sectional area. It's basically, if you don't worry about CFM or anything like that, this is the size of the engine. It takes into account the bore, which is 3.875 on a 4.0, the stroke, 3.414 inches, and the maximum RPM. Deal with me on the 2000 maximum RPM. I'll explain why. And then the airspeed. The airspeed does change as you go faster, but I left it the same. The reason I did the 2000 is because I just wanted to show what primaries need, right? So you're at low RPM, you're trying to go up a hill, or you're at a stoplight and trying to get going, or you're trying to tow something, right? You need a half square inch minimum cross-sectional area, which is the area of your intake runner. Right here, 0.6, right? That's pretty insane. That's like right on the nose. If we take those exact same parameters and bump it up to 4,500 RPM, which would need secondaries or primaries and secondaries, you need 1.2 inches. And the top is 1.054. So added together, you get 1.6 inches. Dude, Offenhauser is pretty on the nose when it comes to the inline six, at least the 4.0, which they didn't design it for a 4.0, they designed it for a 258. Means it's probably even better. Also, let's go back here real quick. Again, to pound this in, the pro tips. Port velocity considerations. Lower speeds equal better top-end power. Higher speeds equal better low-end torque. And this is, again, where I talk about the velocity of going into the intake chamber, right? The lower speeds equaling better top-end power, that, well, lower speeds in comparison to RPM, I think is what they mean. I don't know. Again, just a guy in a shed. I'd actually like to look into that more, and I will. In comparison, I didn't want to talk about the Clifford on this one, but in comparison, the Clifford is 1.54 and 1.27, which comes up to 1.95 RPM, right? So kind of comparable. It's a little bit bigger, but again, Offenhauser wasn't made for full tilt. Clifford was. So hopefully that all makes sense. So let's see where it didn't do so hot against the Clifford, right? I wouldn't say it failed. You know, if it's an intake you have, it's better than the stock one, in my personal opinion. But it didn't do as well. And I don't think it's the concept. I don't think it's the theories behind it, because obviously we see it all over the place in other engines, spread bore, variable valve, in modern vehicles, all that stuff, right? So even in you know, high race engines. So I think it was more so in design. I think it's the sharp corners that did not help. And again, also cut some slack. This was built in the 60s. This was designed in the 60s. So they certainly didn't have, you know, computational fluid dynamics programming. And even a lot of the big race guys that you watch on YouTube and stuff like that, they don't even trust the programming. Like, they trust it, they use it as a guide, but it's not like, oh, well, there you go, let's just print that up and there you go, that's the best of the best. Maybe with AI in the future, but in fact, I was reading an article about it was a Ford Mustang. I don't know, GST. I don't know. Not a big Ford guy, but it was some race car, some race Mustang. They 3D printed 15 or 20 different hood scoops and vents and this, that, and the other. And it's Ford. It was the actual, the actual corporation doing this. They have the money to buy crazy programs, right? And they have the engineers and everything. They still obviously didn't trust it because they had to test it in real world situations. That's why wind tunnels exist, and not just take a picture of the car, 3D scan it, and throw it into computational, or into CFD programming. So anyhow, for this being from the 60s, you could see where that would be. And I don't think they've changed it since then. Same casting and everything. So, I mean, in that aspect, it's actually kind of cool. It's, it's vintage, classic. So where I think the mess ups were the sharp corners. Those bores I was showing you are definitely sharp. You can see where it just falls off here. And it's not going to cut your finger if you dig down in there and feel it. But definitely sharp, right? And here, of course, I broke out my little smoke machine because I was interested. And I tried with vacuuming it out. And we see here, you can kind of see how sharp the end of the bore is from the bottom of the carb. And it looks a little messy. You can see nothing's touching the bottom of the intake. And that's why this is a heated intake. So basically, if there is separation of fuel and air, it's supposed to hit the bottom and vaporize. The fuel is supposed to vaporize and then go back into the intake tract or get moving into the intake tract. So you kind of see some craziness there. It's a much better view from the back. It's an interesting design, huh? That starts to twirl up in there. You can kind of see like an eddy, so to speak, starting, if not there. So if you see this, it goes and then somehow it doesn't want to actually hit the bottom. I don't quite understand that. If any of you guys know more CFD than I do, I'd be really interested to hear why it kind of goes around the very center and then swirls back into itself. I didn't expect that. Basically, that protected little bubble in the very center of it. I don't know why that's there, but it's cool to see. I think that is kind of what ruins it there, right? The other thing is it being at the bottom. Like I said, it's a heated manifold. I have a 195 thermostat. So the primary is only being on the bottom. It goes, here's my clear casting. In theory, it would shoot straight into the port and hit the wall. It has to make that turn, right? Well, if we tilted it, maybe it would work better. The only problem is if you tilt it, I can't tilt this stock one because then it'd have an acute angle, which I don't think helps anyone. And what I think would help is right here is kind of how the flow goes, right? So it comes down to bores, hits the bottom, curls back up, and kind of bounces until it starts to get more straight, correct? As we see there. One idea is to actually cut out the dividers. I called Offenhauser about this, spoke to a tech. He didn't sound real like interested in telling me about that, but I asked him and he was like, I mean, I guess it would help in higher RPMs or help overall. He was very, very hesitant of me doing the primaries. I don't know why. Maybe there's something in there, but I don't know. I mean, I had to basically tell him like, dude, I don't care. Like I'll throw this out if it doesn't work. Like it's all good. And he's like, okay. So I think he underestimated my craziness. But the reason that this may work is more so to open up, to actually cause a plenum. Because right now there's not a plenum in there. And so that there would be a further angle or a not as tight of an angle. It's not getting sucked into such small little tracts, right? That would help. And then if I had a way to machine it, I would actually curve out the bottoms so that you have a little bit better flow going into there. Now, I don't know how you do that. I really don't. I tried to find, I'll admit, I tried to find like a bit, like a router bit or something like that was basically backwards from, I guess you'd call it like a cove cut. And anyway, see if I could somehow make that. The cutting out of the dividers is pretty easy, but I don't know how I would basically machine out from the inside to smooth it out. If you have some ideas, let me know. So that's how I would improve it in the 21st century. And maybe I'm an idiot. In fact, I know I'm an idiot, but maybe I'm missing something. And part of the reason I know I'm an idiot is because you know how it failed on a propane? That was my mess up. I guess propane doesn't work out very well with heated plenums. I didn't know that, and it doesn't really make any sense to me still, because with fuel you get, fuel, it hits the bottom because fuel cools down intakes and you want to vaporize it because it's a liquid. Well, propane is a vapor, and you heat it up like my actual mixer is plumbed in to my heater line to my on the Jeep. So I mean, you preheat the propane, so to speak, but then I guess when you dump it into a heated intake, it doesn't react so well. I don't know. That's what I read. So I think I might have screwed the pooch on that one, which would kind of actually explain why the Clifford did good, because the Clifford is not heated. I just run that. I don't even think it has a provision for heating for a heated manifold to be one. I don't really care. I don't run it that way. I run it cold. So I might have messed that one up. I'm not gonna lie, I don't care enough to rerun it and then not plumb it in. Maybe one day, but I just dropped off more stuff for the stroker. Yeah. That's still getting built. The machinist actually just built out another part. He bought a second garage next to him. So that's kind of cool. Good for him. Means probably gonna take me longer because he's gonna be working on that space. But anyhow, and I got to get off the intake a little bit, just a tad. When I do the stroker, I have some other ideas. I'm going to get back into it, but I'm going to get off of the intake bit just for right now because it's not maxed out, but I have other stuff I want to work on. Some more aesthetic stuff with the Jeep. It actually, oh, you're not going to believe this. Like, I want to do a custom dash, so to speak. Well, actually kind of like more of like a custom gauge pod, but it'll built into the dash. And I want to do it to be able to test cold air intakes. I want to do it. I'm thinking about getting the carb cheaters because I'm really, really interested in seeing how they react and what they do. So basically my aesthetics may be into more induction. It's going to lead into more induction, and kind of like how I did the high idle. And I just ended up using it to test the carburetors, or to test the intakes. So I'm going to start putting out a few vids here and there about more aesthetic stuff, some organization stuff. Like I need a spare tire put back onto my Jeep. I have the spare tire, I have the mount, everything, but I have a crazy idea on reverse mounting it that doesn't make any sense right now, but it will, I think, when I do it. I have 2 or 3 different reasons to do that. For storage, for the difference in rim size, this, that, and the other. So I want to work on that. And that's what I want to start putting some videos out on. And it's a little bit more fun. I love the intake stuff, but it is kind of dragging too, and it's a lot to compile together. Yeah, click subscribe. Hope you like it. If you see anything I did wrong, just be like, dude, you're a dumbass. You did this wrong. This is why I failed. Blah, 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 blah. All right? Video's long enough. Thanks, guys. I'll see you around.